Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to do my December wrap-up. I forgot what month it was for a second, because I'm still behind on my wrap-ups. I did that whole thing at the end of last year / beginning of this year to catch up, and I'm behind now, but hopefully I won't stay behind. So this is December wrap-up. I read 6 books in the month of December. 4 of them I read during a reading vlog that I did that was like Christmas themed. So if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts about those books, you can check out that video. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a shorter wrap-up because I'm only going to be fully reviewing 2 books. I do have the list of books that I will talk about in the description box down below, along with timestamps, and I also have links so that you can buy the books if you so choose. If you buy those books using those links, I get a little bit of kickback, and you also go to supporting small bookstores. So it's a win all around. You get a new book, I get a little bit, bookstores get a little bit. There we go. The first book that I finished in December was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This book is definitely very popular, and it's also very polarizing. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. Catherine House follows a girl named Inez who ends up going to Catherine House, which is a sort of university adjacent school. It's kind of unclear, like it's definitely meant to be like a university replacement, but it's a little different than how most people know about college in the US, even though it takes place in college. And it's kind of weird that they don't mention any of the other like elite schools. But anyway, it's supposed to be this very elite school, and anyone who goes to Catherine House and graduates comes out and you can get like any kind of job that you ever want. Everyone who comes out is very, very successful. But there's also a kind of mystery around Catherine House because if you attend this school, you have to leave the outside world behind. You are not allowed to have any contact with the outside world for the 3 years that you're there. You're only allowed to know Catherine House. And the way people who graduated talk about it ends up being in this very mysterious way, and the way people are attached to it is very odd. But we follow this girl named Inez who is attending, and we just kind of follow her journey and see the secrets of Catherine House. So the reason that this is so polarizing is because it's just a weird book. It really doesn't have a lot of plot. The characters are hard to get to know, not even really likable, but just like to follow, if that makes sense. So I get why it's really polarizing. Lots of people either love it or hate it. I actually happen to be in the middle of the road. Yeah, I gave this 3.5 stars. I think what helped me a lot is going into it knowing kind of what to expect. I feel like a lot of people get mad at the end or like in the middle when there's not a whole lot happening and you want to know more answers, but you're not getting them. But I went in knowing I wasn't getting any answers, so I felt like I was able to enjoy the ride more. And I also felt like I was more predisposed to like this because normally I don't really mind books that don't have plots. However, this wasn't super enjoyable for me because those books tend to have stronger characters if the plot isn't very strong, and this really has neither. Inez has no personality. She's very apathetic. She's drunk for the majority of the book, and she is dealing with like inner demons, but you don't get let into that at all, really. You get hints and snippets of why she's acting the way she is, but you don't really know. And also just a personal pet peeve, like I said, she's apathetic. She doesn't care about anyone. She's drunk almost all the time. Half the time in the book, she wakes up in someone else's bed and she has no idea who they are, or she can't even recall doing anything the night before that would have resulted in her ending up in someone else's bed. Like, it's that bad. And she's also like doesn't shower. She doesn't do all these things, yet she has something special that makes so many people drawn to her, attracted to her. And that always is a pet peeve to me because I'm like, what is the special thing? How can she have this special thing? It doesn't make any sense. You really want to hang out with someone who doesn't shower? For real? It's just a personal pet peeve because I feel like this is more of a thing in like YA books, and this isn't YA, but you know, just the character who's like clumsy and yet she has 3 boys fawning over her even though she hasn't done anything remarkable. That's how I felt a little bit about Inez. But once again, I guess because it was so distant, it didn't really bother me too much. It bothered me more after the fact, if that makes sense. The thing that this does have really going for it is the atmosphere, the descriptions of like the mystery of Catherine House, of the insular nature of being at this school. I'm trying to come up with a word that I can't think of, but like it's kind of like a trapped feeling, but like a good trapped feeling these people seem to feel, and the book is very good at getting you to feel that as well. It also might have helped that I read this almost exclusively on my walks at night, because that's what I've been doing in these panorama times, going on evening walks. I was listening to the audiobook while it was dark out, and so that definitely helped with the darker atmosphere. I think if this book had a different ending, this might have gotten 4 stars. I knew that the ending wouldn't be really resolved that well, but I expected a little bit of something, and this gives you nothing, straight up nothing. So I wasn't a fan of that either. Overall, this is a really hard book to recommend. I'd only recommend it if you heard me say everything that I just said and you still want to read it. Then I think maybe you'll have a similar experience to me where you go in knowing, so things that bother other people won't bother you as much maybe. But other than that, it's just so like weird that I feel weird recommending it to most people. But yeah, if it still piques your interest, give it a shot, see what happens. Next, I read The Way Back by Gabriel Savit. I received an arc of this via NetGalley from Penguin Teen, so thank you very much to them. All opinions that I say are my own. This follows two teens, Yehuda Lieb and Bluma, who, after the Angel of Death visits their town, end up going on separate adventures that both lead them to the far country, a Jewish land of spirits and demons. So that synopsis was a very basic synopsis, but there is a lot going on, but also not as much going on. This was an enjoyable read. I gave it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it in a similar way to Catherine House, where the atmosphere is the strongest part of the book, although this is better in the aspects of character and plot. I just personally didn't understand the motivations for the characters, and the plot was kind of confusing because of that as well, so it just was harder to read. The way it's written almost feels like it's middle grade with its whimsical nature, but the subject matter and the complexity of the writing definitely age it up a little bit. This does deal with grief heavily. Like I said in the synopsis, the Angel of Death visits their town, so you can guess something happens there. And the story definitely deals with that head on. It explores facing death, and it just has a lot to do with death, but in a, I guess, wholesome way, kind of. And I thought the ideas that were explored surrounding death and grief were really interesting, although a bit convoluted due to the characters not having real motivations, in my opinion. But it was still enjoyable to read. So overall, if you're looking for a atmospheric read and you don't mind weak characters, then I would recommend it. So the rest of these I read during that Christmas reading vlog, so that's information. Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is an epic fantasy set in a world inspired by pre-Columbian Americas, where we follow a bunch of characters, I believe 5, in the 20 days leading up to the winter solstice, which this year happens to also be a solar eclipse, a rare celestial event prescribed by the sun priest as an unbalancing of the world. This is also a very popular book. I think this kind of took book 2 by storm, not really, because Rebecca Roanhorse is, I think, a pretty popular author. This was such an interesting read. I really enjoyed it a lot. The only reason it got 4 stars instead of 4.5 or 5 is just personal preference, I guess. I enjoyed most aspects of the story, but nothing about it was just amazing to me. But I know a lot of people have given this 5 stars, and I definitely would recommend it. The characters were each interesting in their own ways, which with 5 characters can be hard to do. I especially like 2 of our female main characters, Shiala, who is a ship captain who comes from a race of people that are kind of mythologized in this world, but are definitely people, and her people can control the sea, and Narampa, who is the sun priest. So like I mentioned in the synopsis, that's probably a big deal considering solar eclipse, but she is struggling with the politics of being in such a position, and she is kind of an outsider in this position, so she's dealing with all of that, and I really liked her political intrigue. The world building involved in the story was phenomenal. We're introduced to so many different cultures and characters, like I mentioned, Shiala's culture, I think we're going to learn more about in the next book. And Narampa has a whole thing with the Sun Priest, and then even within the area that the Sun Priest is in, there's different clans there that don't directly follow it, and it's very interesting. I also really liked that characters in the story being queer is a non-issue. Shiala is attracted to multiple genders, and there is a non-binary side character who uses neo-pronouns, which I thought was really cool. I also thought this uses mythology in interesting ways. We have a character who is kind of said to be a living god, which I thought was really interesting. We get to see a lot of his backstory. And the plot and writing of the story were definitely engaging. As you're reading, you want to know what's going to happen next, which is always a good sign that you want to keep turning pages. Overall, I really enjoyed the story, and based on the ending of this one, I can't wait to get to the next one. The Cleaners by Ken Liu. This is a short story that was part of a collection of stories that I can't remember the name of that was put out by Amazon. And I thought they were Christmas short stories, which is why I read it, but they weren't really Christmas short stories, even though this one is set around Christmas time, but it's not really about Christmas. This is set in an alternate universe where memories can be felt by other people to varying degrees. And we follow 3 characters. One is the cleaner who can't feel memories at all, which makes him a really good cleaner because he's cleaning off memories from other people. Another character is a normal person in this world where basically if you touch an object, you can kind of feel how someone else might have felt when they were touching that object. And then the third character we follow is someone who's oversensitive to these memories. So they can see exactly what happened when they touched that object. So like for example, my camera, if that person touched my camera, they might see me filming this video is kind of the idea. So that whole idea and everything that was going on, I thought was really interesting. This is a very short story. I think it's maybe 50 pages. So I don't want to tell you too much, but I really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 stars. Come On In, edited by Adi Al-Said. I received this as an ARC from Penguin Teen via NetGalley. This is a short story collection with a theme of immigration around the US. Because this is a short story collection, it's hard to review like collectively, but overall I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed the majority of the stories in here. And like usual for short story collections, I'll tell you my favorite and my least favorite. So my favorite short story was The Trip by Sona Chirapotra. This is about a girl who stopped at the airport due to how she looks and what's on her passport. The whole story was so heartbreaking and real, and for me, really makes you think about what other people have to go through, because the main character or her family were refugees, which is why her passport looked the way it did. And it's just makes you think about what America's doing, what's going on here. My least favorite was When I Was White by Justine Larbelistier. Sorry. It was about a white Irish Australian girl who was brought over to the US, specifically Harlem, New York, by a black man. It follows their love story and her experience living in Harlem around black people, I guess. I had 2 main issues with it. One of them was bigger than the other just because I felt like it was the antithesis of what the collection was supposed to be. But the smaller one, which isn't that small, is the story involved a very inappropriate power dynamic between the main character and her love interest, because the main character was actually 16 and she lied to the man and told him he was 19, and the love interest was a grown man who also knew that she was lying. So did not like that. And not to mention, this whole story felt like a weird way for the white author to make commentary on black issues that she had no business or the nuance to really discuss. So the whole story weirded me out, but that was my least favorite by far. The majority of the stories were really good, so it felt weird to punish the whole collection because this one story I didn't like. So there's that. And the last book thing that I read in December, and the last thing that I read of the entire year of 2020, wow, interesting, was The Wickeds by Gail Forman. This follows the wicked stepmothers from Cinderella, Snow White, and Rapunzel, who are tired of dealing with the fallout of being known as the wicked stepmothers after their stepdaughters had originally lied about them, and we're finding out that maybe not everything that we once thought about these fairy tales was true, and they decide that they want to get their happily ever after, even if they have to make it themselves. This is a fun little short story that kind of turns the fairy tales we know and love on their head. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I enjoyed reading it. There were some aspects that were kind of iffy just because it was really short, and I'm not sure that certain subjects could be dealt with in such a short amount of time. I think this has a content warning for rape if you need that. This does deal a little bit with like family and just understanding motherhood kind of. So yeah, it was a fun read. And if you're interested in this tiny short story, why not pick it up? So those are all the books that I read in December. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments down below, let me know what was your favorite book that you happened to read in December, if you can remember that far. Leave me a crown emoji in the comments down below as well. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post a video. I try to post every Sunday and one other day a week, but sometimes it doesn't happen, but hit the notification bell and you'll know. All my social media is in the description box down below, as well as lots of other links. Check them out. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!